Hello and good afternoon. My name is David Lazakovitz. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar session, An Introduction to the American Board of Radiology's Online Longitudinal Assessment, abbreviated OLA. Before we begin, let's take care of a few housekeeping items. This webinar session is being recorded for quality and training purposes. To minimize potential distractions and interruptions, all webinar participants have been muted. Today's webinar session is scheduled for 30 minutes. In the first 15 minutes, I will provide an overview of the OLA program. The remaining time will be used to answer questions that are entered during the webinar session. Let's review how to submit a question. WebEx has a question and answer feature that allows you to submit questions in real time during the session. To submit a question, click on the caret next to the Q&A icon. This will open the question and answer window in the webinar interface. Type your question into the box provided and click the send button to submit your question to the webinar moderator. After your question is submitted, it will be displayed in the Q&A section. Remember, we'll answer as many of the submitted questions as possible in the time available at the end of the webinar session. So let me start by thanking any of the folks on the webinar today that are volunteers. A huge thanks for all the work that you do. We have about 1,200 volunteers at the ABR that provide their expertise throughout the year in a variety of tasks, from writing OLA questions to writing questions for our other initial certifying examinations, to serving as oral examiners, SAM reviewers, and a number of other activities. So we couldn't do this work without the help of those individuals, and thanks so much to those people. As we start, it's important to recognize that we've done a phased approach for the launch of OLA. So actually earlier this year we launched OLA for all those participating in MOC that have certification in diagnostic radiology and the diagnostic radiology subspecialties of neuronuclear and pediatrics. If you're on the webinar today, you're likely certified in interventional radiology, medical physics, or radiation oncology, which we are just ramping up and starting. Currently, we are in the OLA pre-launch period, which started last Monday. The purpose of pre-launch primarily is really just to give you an opportunity to become familiar with the OLA software, really to access the system, log in, make sure you don't have any technical difficulties logging in, see how the interface works and how the different buttons work and how feedback is provided, and just also give you an opportunity to evaluate the type of content that you'll see in OLA. Every specialty has anywhere from 4 to 5 practice questions. Those practice questions just will continue to cycle through. So once you get to the 4th or 5th, you'll notice you come back to the first one that you've answered. That's intentional. Also during the pre-launch period, the dashboard isn't going to change. The dashboard is meant to take account for live OLA questions. So you'll start to see the dashboard impacted when you start answering live OLA questions, which will actually start happening on January 6th of 2020, so right around the corner. And I'll get into some more details about when you'll know that you have questions available and those kinds of things. It's also important to recognize that OLA exists within the constructs of our current MOC or maintenance of certification process. So on your screen right now, you see an outline of what the maintenance of certification program looks like. Part 1 being professionalism and professional standing. Part 2 is the lifelong learning and self-assessment portion. Part 3 is where we'll focus all of our time today, which is assessment of knowledge, judgment, and skill. That was previously the ABR's 10-year MOC exam. Now we're transitioning to OLA. And then Part 4 of the MOC process is the quality improvement piece. So why OLA? Why did the board decide to head in this direction? It was for a variety of reasons, but one of the primary reasons was really to improve upon the formative aspects of the Part 3 portion of MOC and the assessment. The 10-year exam did a really nice job. It was a really good testing instrument, but what it didn't do was provide any item level or question level feedback. So you knew whether you passed or failed, but you didn't know, hey, I got that question wrong and I got that question right. It it didn't give you a good sense of performance at a clinical question level. So we wanted to improve upon that. Also wanted to provide a more convenient approach to Part 3 for diagnostic radiologists and interventional radiologists in particular. Those two groups had to come to Tucson or Chicago to one of the ABR testing centers to actually take that 10-year maintenance of certification exam. Obviously, there's cost associated with that, the travel, just the inconvenience of being away from home, practice, family, those kinds of things. So wanted to improve upon those aspects. Even radiation oncologists and medical physicists had to seek a seat at a Pearson View Center, which most of the time was close, but for some people they would have to travel 20 or 30, maybe even 40 miles to find a location with a seat. So really just wanted to improve upon the convenience aspects. The other thing that we've looked to change a bit with OLA is the focus of the actual content of the assessment. So with OLA, what we're trying to focus on is something that we've termed walking around knowledge. Walking around knowledge is really this idea of content that you see and do and encounter in the course of a normal clinical day. So it's really just bread and butter clinical things that you see day in and day out. That's really been the focus for our volunteer committees as they've developed those questions for OLA. Who participates? All diplomates participating in MOC would also participate in OLA, and as I mentioned already, diagnostic radiologists began that earlier this year, and then radiation oncology, interventional radiology, and medical physics will start with their live questions January 6th of 2020. We've talked about some of these at a high level, but just to kind of take them point by point, some of the ways we feel that the new approach for Part 3 is an improvement over the previous 10-year exam. I mentioned already that it eliminates the need and the cost for travel. With the focus on the walking around knowledge, we really don't think there will be a need or a requirement to study. We truly believe that your normal clinical activities will more than adequately prepare you to be successful in OLA. As a result, it requires very little time away from practice. And then again, the instant feedback and the formative aspects of OLA in how you receive information after you've answered the question. So once you've answered the question, you'll know immediately whether you've answered it correctly or incorrectly. You'll know what the correct answer is. And you'll also be provided with a short rationale and at least one reference. In addition, if you answer a question incorrectly, which at some point in time is probably bound to happen, what would happen is the system would, in about 4 to 6 weeks, give you a very, very similar question to the one that you've answered incorrectly. We call that a variant question. The idea there is really that if you've missed a question in a specific clinical content areas, there may be an opportunity for learning and an opportunity for re-education there. We believe that the OLA is going to be more focused and relevant to daily practice, again, because of the target and the focus of the content being walking around knowledge. It's also designed just by its nature to be much, much more gradual. The previous 10-year exam, it was about 200 to 240 questions in a 4-hour period. With OLA, you're looking at 200 questions over a 4-year period. So obviously much more gradual and hopefully also therefore much less stressful. There's a lot of inherent flexibility built into OLA, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in the coming slides. But within some broad guidelines, you really decide how often you answer and when you answer and where you're answering and those types of things. So that's one of the huge benefits of OLA. The next couple of slides, I'll review some of the common questions that we receive as folks start to get involved in OLA and trying to understand how the system works and how you'll receive content and answer questions. So first of all, how will you know that you have questions to answer? You'll actually receive an email Monday morning, January 6th of 2020, that will indicate to you that you have 2 question opportunities that are available to you. Now, the questions aren't actually in the email. The email is just a notification that the question opportunities are there and ready. In order to access the questions, what you would do is simply log in to your OLA account. And then once you're logged in, you log in with your ABR ID and your password. And then once you're logged in, you would see the questions that are available to you. So with answering with receiving 2 question opportunities per week, over the course of a year, you're going to receive 104 question opportunities. Now, you don't need to answer all of those. You actually only need to answer 52 of the questions. And that doesn't mean you need to answer 52 correctly. You simply need to attempt and answer 52 questions. The other nice part about how the flexibility is built into the system is when those question opportunities become available, you don't have to answer the question right at that moment. You don't even have to answer the question that week or the week after or the week after. When opportunities to answer questions become available on the first Monday of every week, what happens is those questions are available for 4 weeks. So you can let them build up. So OLA will store up to 8 questions at any given time. And actually, this is probably the most common approach that we've seen diagnostic radiology folks take this year, is that they've allowed the system to store the 8 questions, which is a 4-week period of time. They log in and spend 15, 20 minutes answering those 8 questions, and then they leave it for another 4 weeks, and 8 questions build up. They log back in and answer those 8 questions. And actually, over half of the diagnostic radiology participants finished all 52 questions by July. So that's not a requirement, but that's how it looks like a lot of people chose to approach it and wanted to approach it. As far as using another feature that we've created, it's called declines. So we've built into the system with OLA, again, another kind of flexibility item, the ability to decline questions. And declines are different from allowing a question to expire, because if you get a question opportunity and you allow it to expire, that just means you didn't want to or didn't have the time to open up a question and view that question, and that's okay. That's why we give you twice as much content as what you need to answer. When you decline a question, it's different. What that means is that you've actually chosen to answer a question, you open it up and you look at the question and you may decide, hey, I just don't really practice this. I don't do this. I don't see this in my normal clinical environment. This isn't a question that I'd like to answer, and then you have the ability to decline the question. So it doesn't count against you. It doesn't count for you. It's just used as an opportunity. So the declines are there for you to use in those types of instances that you deem appropriate for your own personal situation, and you get 10 declines per year. The questions are timed in OLA. So questions are either timed at 1 minute or 3 minutes. A 1-minute question is going to be a question like that just has text or one image and no calculations. That's going to be a 1-minute kind of question. If it's a 3-minute question, it's most likely going to have more than one image, or it might have a video that you need to watch, or a stack of images, or may require a simple calculation to determine what the answer is, something that's going to take a little bit more time with that particular question. So 1 minute or 3 minutes as far as the timing. Again, for preparation, we do not believe that study will be necessary. We really honestly and truly believe that your normal clinical activities will definitely prepare you to be successful in OLA. If you need time off, I've talked about the flexibility quite a bit already. You can actually take up to 6 months off every year and still have enough question opportunities to answer the required 52 each year. So flexibility is there and available if you need it. We've had a couple of comments from the diagnostic radiology folks as we started OLA about the frequency of reminders. Remember, I said that you'll receive an email every Monday indicating that you have 2 question opportunities available. We understand, you get a lot of email and your inbox is already pretty full. If you choose to, in the future, we'll have some options for you to change your reminder frequency. So let's say you just wanted to get a reminder when you had 8 questions available and you were going to have some that were going to expire at the end of the week. You could select that reminder option, or we will even provide an option for you to say, I don't want any reminders. I just want to manage this on my own. Just don't send me anything related to OLA as far as reminders go. That will be an option for you as well in the near future. If you are already in MOC, you're already in OLA. You don't need to enroll in OLA or send us anything. On January 6th, you'll start automatically receiving the emails indicating that you have question opportunities available to you. A quick word about technical requirements. Chrome, Firefox, and Safari are the preferred browsers for OLA. It also does work on Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge. Unfortunately, Microsoft makes programming a bit more difficult for us, but it does work if that's the only browser that you have available. We would also recommend that you use a device that has a minimum display resolution of 1024 by 768. That's really just because in the event that you have a question that has images, trying to navigate the images and the question and the answer options and all that on a screen smaller than can display 1024 by 768 can be problematic. So after you've answered a couple of questions, you're probably going to start wondering, okay, I've answered some questions. I wonder how I'm doing. How am I performing? Well, actually, we will show your performance once you've answered 52 calibrated questions. And the word calibrated there is important. What the calibrated means is that it's achieved certain minimum thresholds in two specific areas. One is that enough people have answered that question that you have also answered. And number two, enough people have actually rated that question. And when I say question rating, I mean that means that they've contributed to the idea of establishing the passing standard for that particular question. And I'm going to talk about question rating again on the next slide, so more about that in a moment. So once you've answered 52 calibrated questions, that's when you'll see how you're performing on your unique set of 52 questions against what the passing standard is that the question raters have established. Now, once you've answered 200 calibrated questions, then that would be the first time that we would evaluate your performance in OLA. And then once you reach that 200 question threshold, the evaluation of your performance in OLA would be done annually each year. So the passing standard is set using a criterion reference standard. So what that means is we do not score, or we do not grade on a curve. Rather, we take each individual question and evaluate it separately or individually. And the way that occurs is through you all. Everybody that is an OLA participant also has the option to serve as a question rater. As a question rater, you are the group of people that are establishing the passing standard for the individual questions. The way you become a question rater is when you log into OLA. Toward the top of the screen, you'll see a section about the question rating process. Requires you to watch a short 4-minute video on what the question rating process is and how it works. And then after the video, there's a short 4-question quiz just to, really confirm your understanding of the question rating process. Once you've done that, after you answer your own individual OLA questions, you have the option and the opportunity to contribute as a question rater and actually rate the question to establish the passing score for that specific question. Now, a little bit about what were to happen if you got to the end of 200 questions. Again, you've answered your 52 per year, and you've gone 4 years, and now you've reached 200 questions, and now comes the point where your performance is evaluated. And let's say, we don't anticipate it'll happen a lot, but some will find themselves in the situation that you're below the passing standard. You're not meeting or exceeding that passing standard. What happens? So at that point in time, your MOC status would be downgraded from meeting the requirements to not meeting, and you would have 1 year to remediate your performance. You could do that in one of two ways. The first way would be to answer more OLA questions, and if by answering additional OLA questions your performance meets or exceeds that passing standard within that year of remediation time, then we would automatically upgrade your status from not meeting back to meeting, and you would continue with your OLA participation. The other way that you could remediate your Part 3 performance would be by taking and passing a traditional exam. If you choose the exam route, you would need to take and pass an exam every 5 years. If you're using OLA as your method to fulfill Part 3, then OLA is continuous. Again, you reach that 200 question threshold, and then you're evaluated annually over the most recently answered 200 questions. I'm just about done and about ready to get to the question and answer portion, but a few more quick notes before I do that. If you have questions about MOC or OLA or anything ABR related in the future, we have a great group of ABR staff. They're called Certification Managers. They're available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Feel free, if you ever have questions, to either email or call those folks that are out there and ready and able to help. We've also created some resources that are available on the ABR website. We've created a short 3-minute introductory video. There's a really nice set of OLA FAQs that go into some pretty good detail regarding some of the commonly asked questions about OLA and participating in OLA. So check out the website for that information. Here's the contact information for those certification managers, the information at the ABR email address, and then the telephone number there. I'll come back to that in a minute. I also want to display this QR code. If you open up the camera on your phone and scan this, it will actually take you to the ABR webpage that has the OLA FAQs. So a good resource to have, if not now, in the future.